Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the 9th of a series of basic Python programming course. I'm Sarjun and you can call me Sarj. I'm a data scientist, a data science trainer, and a mentor to the youth. So before we start, I would like to seek your cooperation and understanding to help me with my socials as I'm trying to reach out to as many people as possible. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, subscribe, send me a DM, and I will respond to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Now let's get on to today's segment. Okay, today we're going to be looking at flow control, part 2. We already covered part 1 where I covered if and else statements, right? Okay, here in flow control part 2, we're going to be looking at while loops, for loops, break, and continue. So you'll be wondering what while loops are. I'm going to be looking at what for loops are. I'm going to be looking at what break and continue statements are. So before we start that, just give me a moment. So a while loop, right, is basically similar to your if condition. So your if condition, let me get out my pen. Your if condition has a condition here before it's executed. If this condition is true, say if x equals to a particular value, say 2. If x is equal to 2, double equals to 2, what do is that you print x is 2. Sorry for this. Yeah. So x is equals to 2, right? Right. So this block of code only gets executed if the if condition is true. Similarly, on the same framework, we look at while x fits a certain condition. So if x equals to true, example, this condition, do something, right? Maybe you keep printing, I love Python. I love Python, right? So that this is while x is equals to true. But there would be at some point of time in your code, somewhere along the way, where x becomes false. When x becomes false, and when this loops back into this while loop as a loop, right? It keeps executing, and when x becomes false somewhere down your code, when now while loops see whether x is equal to true is not true anymore, it will exit the loop. So it will not execute this, it will exit, right? It will move on to the next code. So that is what a while loop does, right? So yep. So in summary, that's basically what while loop does. So let's move on to while loop. Okay, so while loops execute a specific block of code repetitively, as I just said earlier. As long as the test expression is valid, the loop will execute the specific block of code, and the loop is used if there is no specific number of time the block of code has to be executed. So if you do not have a specific number of time that you want to execute the block of code, you can use a while loop until a specific condition is attained. So let's see an example of how we can write this code down. Okay, let's create a variable num that's equals to 10. Right? At the same time, let's create let's assign a variable addition. So let's call this addition with the value 0 and counter with the value 1, right? Okay, so what we are going to do with this is we're going to create a while loop that has a condition in parentheses of the counter, where counter is smaller or equal to number, which is 10, right? Then the sum addition with counter, so the sum addition with counter is so you do the sum addition with counter to total to the addition. So what I'm trying to say is, let me type it out so it makes more sense. Then I increment the counter by 1. So let's see how this works. While, let me do a bracket. So you know what exactly why a counter is less than or equals to num. So now at this stage, we for sure know that the counter is actually 0 before we start. Sorry, the counter is actually 1 while num is equals to 10, right? So the expression is going to evaluate. Counter is actually 1, num is equals to 10. 1 is definitely less than or equals to 10. It's going to execute this block of code. So what's going to execute? It's going to execute addition equals to addition plus counter, right? That's what it's going to do. And I'm going to now increment counter equals to counter plus 1. So now in this addition, my addition becomes my addition value here in the first iteration, right? In the first iteration, the first iteration. So let me do a bit of a space here just to show you. In the first iteration, right? Counter, the value of addition becomes 1, right? Let's do this. Becomes 1, right? Because addition is 0. Now I add it with 1, it becomes 1, right? And what happens to counter? Okay, let me space first. Okay, let me do this. Counter now becomes 2, right? Becomes 2 in the first iteration. In the second iteration, so once it goes back and then now it checks counter is 2, num is still 10, 2 is less than 10. Now it goes back into for the second iteration. So the second iteration, addition now becomes 1 plus 1 plus. So counter is basically now 2, right? So 1 plus 2, it becomes 3, right? In that case, counter becomes 2 plus 1 becomes 3. So this happens again. Again, it goes and checks. So counter is still less than equals to num, which is 3 is less than 10, and it goes back into here again until a point of time, right? So you'll keep doing that in the third iteration. This is going to be, addition is going to be 3 plus 3, which is going to be 6. And counter is going to be 4, and it's going to keep incrementing until a point of time where counter is, addition will have a different value. Okay, I'm not going to compute that now. And counter will become 10. After counter becomes 10, the next time when it becomes 11 in the next iteration, it is no longer less than or equals to num anymore. And that is when it will exit this loop, right? So that's how this whole so this is like the last iteration. In the last iteration, when before it exits the loop, right? Counter will be 11. So once counter is 11, when it evaluates this while function, you realize that actually it's actually less than num. So sorry, it's actually more than num. This expression becomes invalid, and then it will not go here. It will exit this whole loop. So when I execute it, when I print it, so now let's try this. Print I'm going to run this soon. Okay, addition value is, what's the final addition value, right? And I also want to print the final counter value, right? Just to show you that I can do that, right? Obviously, the final counter value is going to be 11, right? Okay, so I run this. You can see that my final addition value, when I keep adding counter to it, when it's 1, when it's 2, so I add 2, I add 3, I add 4, I add 5. No, I add 2, then I keep adding every increment of counter, 3, 4, 5, and all the way up to addition plus counter, addition plus counter, addition plus counter. I get a total value of 55. But this is how it is mathematically. That's what's happening behind the scenes, right? Until it's 11, and the number is 11, the counter goes here and it checks whether counter is less than or equals to num, and then it realizes that actually it's not less than or equals to num anymore, and it exits the loop, right? So that's basically what happens. So addition here, the last value is 55, right? That's when this counter stops running, right? This while loop stops running, right? Let's now make it a bit more interesting to see it visually what is happening at every stage, right? So I want to make it easier for you. I want to program out this for you. Okay, so I'm going to create num equals to 10. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create addition equals to 0, and I'm going to create counter equals to 1, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a while loop that has a condition in parentheses of counter smaller than or equals to num, right? I'm going to do that. I'm going to display the variable value of the variable counter, sum the addition. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. Okay, so while counter, so let me give a space so it's easier to see. Counter less than equals to num. Okay, I'm going to execute this block. So I'm going to print. I'm going to show you print counter, right? And I'm going to show you space counter run. So I'm going to show you every single run in terms of words, what is happening, right? And I'm going to do addition equals to addition plus counter, right? And then I'm going to do a print addition addition. So what's the addition value in that addition value, right? And then I'm going to do a counter equals to counter plus 1, and I'm going to print just to segregate between my different iterations. I'm going to do a star star star. So you know that star star star, this star 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 line segregates between them, right? So I'm going to print the final one. I'm going to finally print out. Let me just copy this last two codes. Finally print this out. This will be the last two statements, right? So let me put the final value of addition is, and the final value of counter. Okay, maybe F should be capital. Seems very strong. Okay, let me run this. You can see that in the first, so what happens is in the first counter run, the addition value is 1, right? Then it goes out of the loop, counter is 1, it's less than num. It goes back into the loop, and then now counter is 2, addition becomes 3, 1 plus 2 gives you 3, right? Because you're adding addition plus counter gives you 3, and then you move on. 3 is less than 10, and then it goes into the next loop, and then here, the third counter run, you add 6, 3 plus 3, which is the 3 here, plus the 3 give you 6. That's a new value, and then your counter becomes 4, and then you go into the system, and then this is the fourth counter run. 6 plus 4 give you 10, and then I think you get a picture, right? You get it's 10, and then it goes out, and the counter is still 4 less than 10, and then it becomes 5, and then 10 plus 5 give you 15. Count addition value is now 15, and you keep incrementing it. You notice that your addition value keeps increasing and increasing and increasing until finally in the 10th run, the 10th counter run, you add 45, and 10 gives you 55 for your addition value, and then your counter becomes 11, and then it realizes that it goes into the loop, and then it doesn't fulfill the criteria. It exits the loop, and yep, we move on to the last two codes, which prints the final value of addition is 55, and the final value of counter is 11, right? Yep. So that's as simple as it is, right? A simple explanation of while loop, right? That's how it works, right? If you don't understand, you can definitely try to rewind this video, but I think I made it quite clear on how these loops work, right? Okay, moving on. Interactive while loops. So interactive while loops are situations where you want to make it exciting. You want to make sure that you constantly ask for input from the user, and then until a user types something, then you want to exit the loop. And that happens usually. Sometimes when you're typing your password, usually password you have given 3 tries, but sometimes when you type something, you like in Google search, it's always asking you to type something, and you're always searching something. There's always, it's kind of like there's always a receiving end from your response text when you're typing it in. So it's always asking you something, right? So one example that we can set is I'm going to set a reply. Let me create a variable called reply equals to continue, right? And I'm going to while reply dot lower is not equals to stop. Okay, until this condition is fulfilled. While until this is not equal, that means as long as the reply dot lower is not stop, it's always going to prompt you reply equals to input. Okay, please enter a response. Right. So now you're giving the power to the user, right? You're letting the user decide when to stop asking the user this prompt. So let me show you how this works. The while, so this is the last command that is going has exited the has exited and completed its execution. Okay, it's a simple one. Okay, so when I run this, if I type hello, you're still gonna ask me another response. Hi, how are you? Why still asking me? So tired. What do you want? Why are you torturing me? Oh man. Okay, I need you to stop. Eh, stopped. So it's waiting for me to type in stop for the while loop to exit. As I mentioned, that's the criteria here. As long as it's not equal to stop, keep doing this. But the moment you see it is actually stop, you fulfill this criteria. You do not fulfill this criteria anymore, you exit the while loop. Right. Let's try an example for yourself. Okay, take 5 minutes. Use a while loop to ask a user for an input of his name. Exit the loop if the name is equal to Mike. Then display the while loop has exited and completed its execution. And completed its execution. So try it out and we will resume soon. Thanks. Okay, the way to actually approach this will be similar to the previous example. Okay, we just set input name equals to a empty string, right? And then all we have to do is, as long as while not input name equals to Mike, as long as it's not equals to Mike, right? All you have to do is input name equals to input, please enter your name, right? Until Mike is entered, this is always going to happen. So I'm going to copy this and paste this here, right? So in that case, if I keep running this code, as long as my name is not Mike, if I put Grace, if I put Johnny, if I put Peter, if I put Alfred, it's going to keep asking me for a name, right? Until I put Mike, it will exit the loop. Okay, moving on. For loops. Okay, for loops are basically loops that are iterated over items or a variable or object. So the iteration will continue based on the number of times specified or based on the number of times items within the variable or object. So both while loops and for loops can be nested within another while loop or for loop. Okay, so just a moment. Okay, so for this case, let's say in a for loop, right, we have a box, right? A box. Okay, I'm not drawing it very nicely. I hope you all can follow, right? There's a lot of stuff. It's very messy, right? If I were to take an item inside this box, I don't have a proper order. I could take this item, then this item, then this item, then this item. There's no proper order, right? This doesn't really help with a for loop, right? In a for loop example, you need a very systematic way of looking at order, right? So what I mean by order, right? Let's say I have a box like this, right? Please pardon me for my very extremely bad hand drawing. So I have 1, I have item number 2, I have item number 3, item number 4, item number 5. So I know that when I move on to first item, after that I move on to the next item and the next item from 3 to 4, then 4 to 5. There is some kind of sequence. Okay, so this is why a sequence matters, right? When I think about sequence, you already know I'm looking at variables like list variables, in a sense a range variable, a variable that has some kind of sequence. I'm following some kind of order, right? So in that sense, the system, the for loop knows, okay, I need to go to this item first, then the next item, then the next item, the next item, right? So you need that kind of order in order for you to create a for loop. So in essence, when you're looking at for loops, right, you are actually, it need not be a order of 1. It can be a order of 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. It can be any, as long as there is a constant um, like 2, constant 2 jump from one item to another, or it can be a 1, 2, 3, 4. Pardon me for my extreme. Okay, 4, 5, where there is some form of pattern here, right? So always one increment by one. So you can use either a 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how you want to traverse the orders or the ordered objects, right? So for that case, we need a variable that has that kind of a mechanism, right? So with that said, so we are going to be looking at a range function to help us do that. So what is the range function? So the aim of this program is to find the summation of all natural numbers from 1 to 10 using a for loop, right? So we want to assign a variable number with the function range and values from 1 to 10. So the range function creates a series of numbers, basically a sequence, starting from 1 to 10 through increments of the value 1. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10, right? So let's start off with a number of a range. So number. So this is our range number. Range of 1 to, in this case, 11, because the last value is exclusive, right? So it includes until 10, but excludes 11, right? I want to assign a variable addition, similar to what we did earlier, the example, right? So I want to create a for loop which takes in a reference variable. In each situation, this variable counter takes on a different value, right? So how does that happen? So let's say for counter in number, okay? For counter in number, print counter. So it's going to go into this number. This number is basically let's say, so number is basically like a list variable, right? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. What I said earlier, like it's ordered 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this counter is going to go into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This range function helps us create something like this, right? This kind of variable. Okay, so I'm going to exclude this now, right, and show print counter. So what's going to happen? Let's run this first. Let's see. We can see that it actually prints out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like what we expected, right? It prints because it's actually moving through each and every of this number. For each iteration, it's just printing it out. There is no condition because it is a specific set of times that it's going to do that. If we set it to do it for 1,000,000 times, it's going to do it for 1,000,000 times, right? So in this case, our number only contains 10 numbers, right, as mentioned here, right? And it's just going to go loop in 10 times and print each of the values one time each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So given that is the framework, what we're going to do is we're going to do addition, which is 0 now. In the first iteration, it's going to be addition plus counter, right? And then I'm going to keep doing the loop and finally print the final value of addition is similar to what we did for the for loop earlier, addition. So let's run this. You can see when we run this, the final value of addition is 55. Same. The for loop is doing exactly the same as we did with the while loop, but it looks a lot more cleaner and neater when you use a for loop. So a for loop makes more sense for this kind of a situation, but a while loop does the same thing, right? You just have to set conditions and different ways of how to do it. Okay, a modified version for you to see it in more detail, right? So let me do it in more detail. Number equals to range 1, 11. I'm going to assign a variable addition equals to 0. So this part is pretty much the same. And I'm going to do all this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to create a for loop which takes in a reference variable in this situation of the variable counter. And then I'm going to keep adding it. I'm going to print out just for you to see what's happening at each and every stage, right? So for counter in number, right, same. I'm going to print. Okay, I'm going to print counter, and I'm going to call it counter run, right? So the first counter run, the second counter run, and third counter, and so on. I'm going to do an addition after this. I'm going to add addition plus counter, right? And I'm going to do a print. I'm going to do addition. Let's see. Addition value, right? And I'm going to do print this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to differentiate. And finally, I'm going to copy this final value just to be consistent, what you see at the end. Okay, so let me run this. So when I run this, you can clearly see that in the first run, the first counter run, where the value is 1, right? The addition value is 1 as well, because I'm adding 1 plus 1 plus 0 plus 1, 0 plus 1, that means 0, addition is 0, counter is 1, it becomes 1. Then the second counter run, I'm adding 2 to, so you see I'm adding 1 and 2 becomes 3, I'm adding 3 and 3 becomes 6, and then I'm adding 6 and 4, it becomes 10, I'm adding 10 and 5, 15, 15 and 6, 21, 21 and 7, 28, 28 and 8, 36, and so on and so forth, and my final value is 55, right? Yep, so that's for loops. Okay, a clearer explanation. So in an example, you need the number to start from 1 and end at a specific value, right? So if you want to iterate over a sequence of 10 numbers, 1 to 10 with step 1, in this case, your range is from 1 to 11, excluding 11, right? So this is what we did earlier. How we do that, just to make it more clearer, is for x in range. So this is much more neater to see. 1 is to 11 with 1 increment, right? So I'm just going to print x for clarity, right? I can definitely do 2 as well. If I change 2 steps, it will be 1, 3, 5. You can see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. But it will stop. It will not go to 11 because it excludes 11. So it will stop until 9, right? I can also do 3. You'll go 1, 4, 4 plus 3, 7, 7 plus 3, 10. You'll stop at 10, right? You see 1, 4, 7, 10, right? I can also do 4, which will be 1, 5, 9. I will stop at 9. 1, 5, 9. I also can do 1, 5. So that means you can do one step at 5. So it's 1, 6. That's it. Yeah, you'll stop there because 11 is excluded, right? So yeah, so I'm just making it very simple. This is the increment at what rate it increases. Okay, moving on. What if the steps are not 1? This is what I kind of covered earlier, but never mind. Let me do this again in a bit more detail. Okay, so what if the steps are not 1 and the third parameter can be altered to include that? So let's do a quick example, right? For x in range 1 to 36, let's say 1 to 36, I want to skip every 6 number, right? So if I run this, print x, so it gives me 1, 7, 13, 19, 25, 31. What if you want multiples of 6, right? So if you want multiples of 6, then you have to do a bit more checkings, because you be careful that it must be a multiple of 6, so you don't want to just print out something. If you say a number that is 7 and it's not multiple of 6, it's going to look very bad on you, right? So you do something like this for x in range 1 to 36. in 1, right? So it's going to print out everything from 1 to 36, right? If you put a if x divided by 6, the remainder, right, should be 0, right? Only when the remainder is 0 do you print x. So this is the most secure way of doing it, right? You see 6, 12, 18, 24, 30 from excluding 36, right? There's also another method you can try. You can try something like this for x in range 0 to 36 at 6. So this one starts from 0, then it moves on to 6, and then it's even though it looks simpler, there's a catch. It starts with 0 and all the way until 36, 30 here. But the trick here is it's not very good because you're not doing a check whether it's a multiple of 6 or not. Okay. Yeah. So that's for the range part. So the use of for loop, you also can use it for string references. So let's create a name list with all these names: Jack, Matthew, John, Timothy, and Nicholas. Right? Then use a for loop to loop through each item and print out good morning as the first item and the item as second item, such as good morning Jack. So you want it to be good morning Jack. So this allows you to do a for loop instead of you typing manually good morning Jack. Then you keep doing the next one. Good. See, I'm really tired from typing so many already, right? Good morning, Matthew. This is going to take very long, right? I don't want to do this, right? What if I have to do this for 1,000 people, right? It's not practical. So for name value in name list, I can just test and see what are the name values in name list, right? And you can see it's Jack, Matthew, John, Timothy, and Nicholas, right? It's going to run through. So I know, I've got this help me already. So all I need to do is just add a good morning, not goof morning, good morning. Good morning, and then a comma, and then this comma and space. Yep. And you can see I already do it for 5 names. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Matthew. Good morning, John. Good morning, Timothy, and good morning, Nicholas. Okay, moving on. This is a for loop is to run for 10 iterations. You can make it shorter, but let's do it 10, right? You're going to ask the user interactively what, so you can do for I in range. So I just give 10. So it's just going to give me. You can do a 1 to 10, or you can just do until 10. Sorry, you can do a 0 to 10, or I'm just doing range 10. You'll just give me the same numbers. So just a sequence of numbers, right? I'm going to set my name field equals to input. Please enter your name, right? And then I'm going to print good day, right, with the name field, right? And then I'm just going to print at the end, the for loop has completed its execution. Okay, so when I do this, it's going to start. Please enter name. Let's start off with Mike, Cassandra. So you can see it's responding. Good morning, Cassandra. Nick, Grace, Anderson. What else? James, Arun. Let's see. Still running. Still asking for name. Random name. John, Jill, Lucas. Done. So I've got 10 names. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. And it's greeted everyone, right? In the following test. So it's running it for 10 times, and after that it stops, right? So with that, let's get to a quick practice. Okay. Take 5 minutes. Okay. Create a list variable, greetings list with this good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Then create a list variable name list with Jack, Matthew, John, Timothy, and Nicholas. Use a for loop to print out good morning as the first item, and then the item as the second item. So it's good morning, um, it's good morning, Jack, and so on. And then you're going to be doing the same. Use the same for loop to print out good afternoon and then good evening as well. So yeah, you have to use a nested for loop for this example. So try it out, and you will try this out. See how it works. Right? If we done a nested for loop, yeah, we kind of not exactly. Yeah, but it's good. It's a good practice. Yeah, try this. Try this. Okay. Okay. So how do you go through this question, right? So simply you create greetings list equals to, so let me copy this values and create a list variable here, and let me copy another one called name list, not nail list, name list. So I just copy this names and I paste it here. So simple. Step one is for greeting, I call it for greeting in greetings list, right? I'm going to do, so I can just do this. It's just going to print out good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. But instead, I also want to do a for name in name list, right? I'm going to print greeting, right, which is the good morning, and then I'm going to print name, right? And then I'm going to print the for loop has completed, just to let you know its execution. So you know it's the end of the program, right? So we run this, simple. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Matthew. Good morning, John. So on until good afternoon, Jack. Good afternoon, Matthew. Good afternoon, John. So on, and good evening, Jack. Good evening, Matthew. And good evening, John. And so on. Right. Yep. So next question. A lot of people ask me, when do I use a for loop and when do I use a while loop? This is a very common question, right? There are many different aspects, right? You can definitely use a for loop and a while loop interchangeably, but there are times when the for loop makes more sense and there are times a while loop makes more sense, right? So it really depends on your situation and your criteria that you're looking at when you're coding your code as well, right? So example, I'll just give you a quick example. Every day a child gets 8 sweets, and in order to keep count and follow a specific sequence, a for loop is ideal, right? So remember to add 1 to a display as Python starts with 0. So let's try this example, right? For number of sweets, right, in range 8, right, I print number of sweets just to see what it tells you. It starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it because it range 8 starts with 0 to 7, you want to add 1 plus 1 to the value. So you want to do a plus 1 here, plus 1. So you know starts with 1, sweet 1, sweet 2, sweet 3, sweet 4, sweet 5, sweet 6, sweet 7, sweet 8. Okay, anyway, sweets are not good. I'm just using sweets as an example, right? So let's print this is your sweet number. Just do a dash here. Yeah, that's it. You print this, and then after this, at the end, you're going to print you have reached or you have received all the sweets you are supposed to get for the day. My daughter, she likes to always eat a lot of sweets, and my wife always sets a certain set of boundaries, how much sweets to give and all that, right? So here, the first round is going to print this is your sweet number 1. Second round is going to print this is your sweet number 2. Third round is going to print this is your sweet number 3. And then it's going to print your sweet number 4, and so on and so forth until you reach sweet number 8, and then you have received all the sweets you're supposed to get for the day. Now, there will be cases where your child has visited her friends and relatives and already had been given some form of sweets, right? And then in that case, now the sequence is not fixed. So it starts from a value which may be more than 1, and a for loop is no longer ideal, right? In this kind of situations, a while loop is ideal. So now the whole problem has changed. The same problem, but now it's different, right? You know that in this case, it's no longer a strict order. Your child would your child would already gotten a sweet um, from somewhere, and then you want to exclude that. So what you can do off in this case is you start off with number of sweets received. So you set a input, right? In this case, um, set an input. So let's do an integer input. Please enter the number of sweets that you have already received. This is the catch. My daughter never tells me the truth, right? So this program doesn't really work on her, but yeah. So once this is done, right, you can do a while number of sweets received is less than, as you know, less than equals to, or less than 8, right? As long as you don't receive 8, less than 8, you execute a command. So number of sweets, sorry, number of sweets received equals to number of sweets received plus 1. So you plus 1, right? And then you print this is your sweet number, right? Let's do this. Number of sweets received, right? Right. So makes it easy, right? And then yeah, then you can definitely print a very simple statement. You have received all the sweets you are supposed to receive for the day. Simple. And then you run this, then you ask, let's say I received 3 sweets for the day. My daughter received 3 sweets for the day. Then you get sweet number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it ends. What if you receive 9 sweets for the day? You've received, it automatically goes to the last. It doesn't even run this, right? What if you've received 0 sweets for the day? You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? Obviously here, if you put negative, it will keep adding. So that's something a bit dangerous. So negative doesn't work. So you might want to do a if statement to exclude negative values as well. Okay. Moving on. There are situations where the number is not dynamic, right? Obviously, you don't want to give 8 sweets a day. It might be different. So as I said, in those situations, you want to store your data in a dynamic database where your data is stored like SQL database or a MongoDB database somewhere, or Firebase, where you can use the API and call and you check how many sweets is the person allotted for the day. I mean, sweets are just an example, right? Yeah. So moving on, break and continue. Okay. Okay. For break and continue, the break statement. So what's the break statement? A break statement ends the loop and resumes execution at the next statement, right? So the break statement can be used in conjunction with while loops or for loops, and it's always used with a conditional statement, right? On the other hand, a continue statement ignores all remaining statements in the iteration of the current loop and moves back control back to the beginning of the loop. So so the continue statement can also be used with while loops and for loops, and it's also always used with a conditional statement. So let's see when that makes sense, right? Just telling you this by words doesn't really make sense, right? So let's create a variable called text and call it Python is fun. Python is fun. Makes sense, right? Now, I want to do a for letter in text. Okay, I want to do print letter. So this is quite simple. It's just going to print Python is fun. Easy, right? I'm just doing a loop. Every time it goes into the letter, the text prints out Python space I S space FUN. Fun, simple, right? But what I want to do is I want to check if the letter happens to be equals to H. Okay, if it equals to H, I want it to break, right? I want it to break. If it equals to H, I want it to break, and at the end, I want you to print. So break means it will chop off the entire the for loop has been completed, right? So if you hit a H, you want to stop running this for loop. Sometimes it's like if you hit a goal target, if you hit a sales target, you want to stop maybe working hard. I don't know, something like that. There's a reason, you want to hit maybe you want to set a like a cutoff. When that happens, you stop running a for loop, right? So in this case, if you hit the H, you stop running your for loop, right? So when I run this, you can see first one it runs into a P, then a Y, then a T, then a H. When it hits a H, it exits the for loop, it breaks the loop, right? And then it prints the for loop has completed. Even though the entire execution has not completed per se, the break has shattered the for loop, right? And now the for loop is stopped as long as there's a H. Right? Obviously, if you remove the H from the word Python, instead of Python, you call it Python. It's fun. Then let's try this. I call it Python. I remove the H. Okay, I call it Python. Nothing happens, right? Because there's a H there, it changes the whole dynamics, right? So similarly, okay, let's do this with a while loop as well, like, which makes more sense, right? Let's try this with while loop. See how while loop, see how you can do this with while loop as well, right? So let's try this. Text equals to Python is fun, right? So I start off by creating a counter equals to -1. This is just a reason I need to do it with -1, right? While counter, right, is less than the length of text minus 1. This is important because I'm trying to look through, right? Counter equals to counter plus 1 if text, and I pass in counter equals to, wait, before I do that, before I do the if, let me just print first. Print text, and then string referencing, right? Indexing, remember indexing? Counter, right? And I print this out. Python is fun, right? So it's just looping through, and it's just adding for me from 0 all the way until what's the length of text here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 characters until 13. It's going to look through, and yeah. But what if I want to break it, like what I did earlier? If text counter, if the value from here is double equals to H, similarly break. That's all, right? And it will just break it out of the for loop, right? Let's see. Let's see. Yep. So what happens when I do this? Yep. It exactly does that, right? It breaks out the for loop, right? What if I don't use break? What if now I use continue instead, right? And if I click continue, it's very similar to break, just that it just doesn't print out H. So it runs here, it sees P, it prints out P, Y, it prints out, T, it prints out. But when it's H, it realizes no, it's going back to the start again. Then it prints out O, prints out N, all the way until the end. So continue still continues, but just removes that particular execution when it's H. But break removes H and everything after that. So that's the only difference between Python's break and continue, right? Just to be complete, I just put in the while loop has completed, has been completed, right? Just to be yep. Okay. So that's the difference between continue and break. Okay, the use of else with for loop. So there's a for loop else and a while loop else. So in Python, both for loop and while loop have else extension. So the else is in the for loop, it will execute after the iterations for the for loop block of code is executed every day. So let's use this example when a child gets the 8 sweets. Okay, let's do the child gets 8 sweets and see how we can use the for loop for the for else loop, right? And how it makes sense to use the for else loop. Okay, so let's start. Let's do the same example, the sweets example. Okay, for number of sweets, oops, not together, right? In range 8, print this is your sweet number. Then I will do a number of sweets plus 1. Okay, so simple. Then I'm going to ask my daughter, are you feeling well after eating the sweet? And you want to make sure you check on them, right? So input, are you feeling well? Right? Yes or no? Right? I'm going to ask a question. And then there's going to be a response. If feeling well dot lower, so I just want to make it smaller, right? Equals to no. So the person is not feeling well, right? Stop giving sweets. Break out of the system and say, and finally just say, print, you have received all the sweets you are to you're supposed to receive for the day. Okay, let's run this. So first time round, are you feeling well? You have sweet number 1. Okay, I'm feeling well. Yes. Second time, are you feeling well? I'm feeling well. Yes. I'm feeling well. Yes. I'm feeling well. Yes. I'm not feeling well. No. And then the question says you have received all the sweets you're supposed to receive. Well, it's okay, but it doesn't make sense because you know that that only works when you are supposed to receive all the sweets, and all the sweets is actually 8 sweets. But well, it doesn't really do the job per se. The code is well written, but the last line seems to, maybe you don't want to say the last line. You don't want to like rub it in. The person is not feeling well, and you say you have to receive all the sweets you're supposed to receive for the day. I'm like rubbing it in, right? I'm not feeling well, and you tell me I've received all the 8, but I only receive 5, or yeah, 5 sweets, and it's not fair, right? So one way around it is where you can use the else block of code, right? So in that case, let's see. I'm doing the same thing, so I'm going to copy from here the same codes, right? The exact same codes, right? I'm going to paste it here. But this time around, I'm going to write the else loop and put this print statement in the else loop instead of just doing it in the as the end of the statement, right? So now let's run this code. So the first time, yes, I'm feeling well. I'll do it at the 5th time just to maintain the consistency. And then at the 5th time, I'm not feeling well. And it does not print you have received all the sweets because it has not completed the full iteration of the code. Now, so you can see that the first one and the second one, there are differences, right? In the way that it's configured. Right? The first one, it prints you have received all of the sweets you have to receive for the day. The second one, it does not do that, right? So given that, let's try, and I actually was feeling well all the way, right? In that case, you're feeling well all the way. When I run it, so here I'm going to do it 8 times. Okay, let me scroll up a bit. Yes, yes, yes. And now it prints you have received all the sweets you're supposed to receive for the day. So this is the slight tweak. You see that this code makes a lot more sense and it's a lot more well crafted because it only prints you receive all the sweets you're supposed to receive for the day if the four block of code was executed perfectly, right? If not, you're going to have a lot of other issues, right? If you do not loop it properly, it's going to create a lot of problems because when you loop it so many times and you just run you have to receive all the sweets you're supposed to receive for the day without understanding that the child actually may not be feeling well, it kind of doesn't really make sense in terms of execution process. It just makes it's a weird kind of expression because the child might have only received one sweet and the child is not feeling well and you said you have received all the sweets supposed to receive for the day. It doesn't really link well. But this approach using the for else loop makes more sense because only if the for block of code is perfectly run will it execute the else block of code, right? To make it very simple. Yep. So the else block is not executed when there is a break in the for loop code, as I mentioned to you earlier. So I've already showed that to you earlier. When there's a break, this is not executed. So I can just copy this whole code and show you, right? So the earlier example, I did say I was not feeling well at some point, right? So feeling well, yes. Feeling well, yes. Feeling well, no. And that's it. It doesn't print the you have received all the sweets you're supposed to receive for the day. Simple. So the use of else with for loop and while loop, right? In Python, both for loop and while loop have else, right? So you can also use it with while loop, right? So let me show you how an example of that can be done, right? So let's see. In while loop, even though while loop might not be well suited for this, no, in this case, because in this case, while loop is well suited because here you're asking the child whether the child has eaten some other sweets, right, from somewhere else, right? So yeah, so here the while loop is more ideal, right? For loop isn't that ideal. So let's see how this changes the dynamics of it. Number of sweets received equals to input. Please enter. Let me go back and copy this. I did this before, right? I don't want to type the whole thing out, right? So this whole thing, right? Just going to copy this. I'm just going to paste it here. Easy, right? Once this is done, okay, once this is done, I have asked while number of sweets is less than 8, number of sweets is equal to number of sweets plus 1. Then I print this is your first number of sweet or second number of sweet, and then I'm going to ask, right? Feeling well. Are you feeling well or not? So it's an input. Please. No, not please. Are you feeling well? Yes or no, right? Simple, right? And then if feeling well dot lower is equals to no, what you're going to do is you're going to break, right? And you're going to write a else statement. You're going to delete. You're going to print this in your else statement, and you're going to see the same thing, how this works, right? Okay, so number of received sweets already received. Say I already say the child already received 3 sweets, right? So you have sweet number 4. Are you feeling well? I type yes. Sweet. Wait, sorry, yeah, there's a typo error here. Let me run this again. Okay, please enter the number of sweets you received. I said 3. Are you feeling well? I said yes. Are you feeling well? I said yes. Then I get a 6 sweet and I'm not feeling too good. I click no. That's it. It doesn't really print. You've received all the sweets for the day. Same thing again. You've received 3 sweets. Are you feeling well? Yes. 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 You've received all the sweets. Same concept. Very easy, right? So these are just simple concepts, right? Let's do this. Assign a for loop to evaluate the input from a user and only print out the non-vowel portion of the input. Then create a string variable, right? And then to do this, okay? Take some time. Please pause the video and try it out, and it should be a good experience for for loops. Okay, how do we handle this, right? Name value equals to input, please enter your name, and then for letter in name value dot lower, if letter in, okay, so I want to know if letter in A, E, I'm creating a list, I, or you can also do something like this, A-E-I-O-U dot S-P-L-I-T. So if you don't know what is this, it's going to split it into a list, right? Copy, it's going to paste here, you can run this. You can see it doesn't really split it. Let me see if I would run this. No, let's not take the risk now. Right, let's just do it normally. I'll test this later. A-E-I-O-U, right? If letter is in A-I-O-U, you continue, you do not print. If not, you print the letter. Simple. It's a very simple one, and then you just have to print the for loop has been completed. Simple, right? Not difficult. So I'm going to type in Matilda, right? Enter. I'm going to print out MTLD without the vowels, right? Okay, with that said, we are at the end of today's session. Flow control, I hope you had a exciting learning opportunity. Till the next session, bye.